leading in Montgomery County and Simpson County. So let's hear from them. In terms of format, we will do a moderated Q&A with the districts, and they'll share about their experiences. And as Walt mentioned at the top, we will pause several times throughout the session for questions that you have. So certainly put those in the chat box if you do, and Walt does a great job managing that. And but let's turn our attention to the districts. I'm going to start with Simpson County on this first question. So, you know, this question, each of these questions will be to both districts, but Kristen from Simpson County, you know, we do know that communities have things in common, but we also know they're different, right? I mean, each community has unique challenges and unique strengths. Can you tell us a little bit about your community there, where you served in Simpson County, and specifically there at Franklin Simpson High School? I think, Walt, she's unable to unmute herself.
Oh, she can't. Let's try it.
How are we doing? There you go.
We good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Like Johnny said, I'm Kristen Holmeyer. I am the special education teacher for our MSD classroom at Franklin Simpson High School. I have been serving in that role for 11 years. Been a part of the community work transition program in the past. And then, of course, when I went to pre-ETS, kind of got out of it a little bit, but then been a part of this pilot program over the last year. Simpson County is pretty unique in that we have just one school system. So all of our kids kind of grow up together, which is really neat. We are a very small town, mainly a lot of factories, a lot of self-owned businesses in our county. So Simpson County, while, you know, we have strengths in getting to know one another really well and being able, our kids know many of the employers. Some of the challenges we face in Simpson County is some of that old school, not really wanting my students in those employment, not understanding their capabilities. So really opening the eyes of the employers to the capabilities of our students. And, you know, we've done a great job with that. We really have reached quite a few employers that are becoming excited about the opportunities for our students to possibly be employed with their companies. As far as, you know, challenges, that's going to be really any kind of small town. You've got to get buy-in. You've got to get buy-in from the parents. You've got to get buy-in from the school. You've got to get buy-in from the community. And so that is, at first, was a bit of a challenge. I'm going to say that we had open doors for every business. We got some shut doors. But for the most part, this has been a very positive program. We have revisited and got back on track. Is that good, Johnny?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great start. That's a great start. We just want to learn a little bit about your community and your district. Sorry, I'm getting some echo here. So I think if you're not speaking, maybe we can, if you don't mind, to put yourself on mute. Well, thanks, Kristen. So we want to ask the same question to Montgomery County. So Arden Goodman is the Director of Special Education in Montgomery County, as we mentioned earlier, and Shelby Jones, who is an employment specialist there in Montgomery County. Tell us a little bit about your district and community.
Hey, Johnny. Thanks a lot for having us here. Just a little bit of background about Montgomery County for those of you from other states or other areas of the state maybe who aren't familiar. Montgomery County is about 30 miles east of Lexington. kind of the east central part of Kentucky, and is medium-sized. So it has some of the challenges that rural communities face, but also has a little bit larger population, so we still have some of those benefits as well. Montgomery County has about 28,000 residents. The district has about 4,400 students. We have 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school, and then we also have an alternative school and a KECSAC facility, which is residential, and students at that facility kind of come and go throughout the year. Our special education child count is about 880. The community in itself has a lot of manufacturing, industries, small businesses. Probably one of the most well-known is that supposedly they make Hot Pockets in Montgomery County, which I didn't know till after I came here. That's pretty cool. Due to the small size of our community, we also see some of those issues that Simpson County saw with needing a buy-in from employers. They just sometimes aren't willing to give our students a chance, and I think this program is going to do a lot for that issue and assisting us with that. We have no public transportation, which causes issues there for students being able to get to work, and especially after they leave us in high school, they then have to be able to do that. And minimal in-county resources after high school. I feel like our work transition program at the high school is really strong this year, but then when they leave us, that follow-up sometimes isn't always there outside of where we provided at the high school.
I was muted, wasn't I? Buddy. Well, that's a great start. You know, we will often hear things, right? And maybe we say them too as, you know, yeah, but you just don't know about my district, or you just don't know about my school, you just don't know about my community. And there's a lot of that that's true, but there are also some things that are common. So as we heard from Kristen and from Arden, you probably we're resonating with some of that around, especially buy-in and perhaps some limited opportunities. So while our communities do have unique strengths and challenges, there are also things that are common. And so part of what we hope is some of this will resonate with you as well from your particular role and perspective. Well, let's move on a bit. So both of your districts, and I'll start with Montgomery County this time, but both of your districts were already participating in the community work transition program. So what was appealing to you about doing more work? Because it's not like you've got time. So what was appealing to you? What made you also want to sign on for Kentucky Works, and maybe talk a little bit about how it's helping you to move your work forward? So we'll start with Montgomery County.
Sure. Dr. Kleiner at UK, who some of you know, contacted Erica Price, who is our high school teacher of students with moderate to severe disabilities, and asked if we would be interested in participating. And at that point, we really didn't have a lot of information about what the pilot would consist of, but we did a webinar with the gentleman at Transcend that kind of got this all rolling. And that informed us on the project and the processes involved. We immediately responded that we were encouraged about the interactive nature of the process, both with the student and with the families as a whole. We also really hadn't thought about the critical importance of the initial contact with the employer and the importance of finding out the needs of the employer, not just the students in our program. And there has to be a match there. And I think that was something that was lacking. And seeing that that would be a critical part in this project really gave us an incentive to get on board with the project.
Great, thanks, Arden. Kristen, what would you add from y'all's perspective in Simpson County?
I think she's muted still.
Okay, Kristen, I think you're unmuted.
So we were very excited when we
Okay, hang on just a minute, Kristen. We're having some difficulty with the connection here. I think you've sort of frozen there. Let's okay, no, we're still sort of frozen. So what I'm going to do is just move on to, and I'm sorry, are you there now? Okay, so let's move on and give Kristen an opportunity to sort of troubleshoot that in her location, and let's just move on to Montgomery County. Already answered this question, didn't you, or did you not? I don't think you did. So let me start with Montgomery County again. So it is early in the process, obviously. So, you know, we recognize that and understand that, but could you point to anything that's been really encouraging in terms of results? And I know that both of your districts are always very concerned about really improving your system. So any encouraging results in any of those areas, even early on?
Yes, Jeremy.
Walt, can you hear me okay? I'm not sure.
I can hear you, Johnny.
Arden or Shelby, that question is to you.
Shelby was going to take this one. Shelby, are you still there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
I was muted. I think the part that I have seen the most results in is a different approach with the employers, actually meeting with them, not saying this is what we have, this is what we're looking for, but to say, what are your needs? How can we meet your needs? Almost as if we are in employment, I hate to say service, but, you know, finding the niche, finding what their holes are with, within their processes and pointing our students to that.
Great. Well, thank you, Shelby. Did you have anything else to add? I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
I was just going to say the response back from the employers has been great. I think I think that's been the biggest piece for us.
Great. Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, but I appreciate you leaning into that. And we, you know, I think it was also something that both districts mentioned on the front end, just the importance of, you know, buy-in and folks sharing that awareness and that expectation that individuals with significant disabilities can contribute to the workforce, and understanding sometimes there are some barriers to that awareness and expectation. It's great to hear that you would point to that as an encouraging sort of thing that's transpired in your district, even though it's early, that some of those really relevant and substantive conversations are happening. I want to check with Kristen before we move on. I know she's trying to troubleshoot some technology issues. Kristen, are you back on and with us?
Kristen is working on getting back on the call.
Okay, so we will come back. So Montgomery County, you're carrying the day for a bit. You're up to the challenge.
No problem.
I know you. All right. So actually, it's a great time to pause, isn't it? I'd forgotten that after those first couple of questions from the districts, we wanted to take, be really intentional and focus on questions that you may have as participants. So I know, Walt, you've been managing that, and feel free to just share with us what folks are saying or asking, and we'll kind of take it from there.
We do have one question And the question is, what curriculum, goals, and objectives are you using for your students to help with the skill acquisition process?
Shelby or Arden, you want to kind of take a shot at that? I mean, I know that certainly you may want to talk a little bit about the development, sort of the ongoing development of the student positive personal profile. That may sort of get into that question just a little bit.
Yes, we can. And Shelby probably needs to be unmuted again as well, because she's the one that's in the classroom with these kids.
Okay, she should be unmuted now.
Oh, wonderful. You guys get to listen to me again. We've used a variety of curriculum. We work very closely with our MSc teacher, building upon what she's using. We just kind of try to meet the need of the student where they are, looking at what our overall goals are. As far as a set curriculum, we haven't necessarily purchased anything or used anything specific for that. Just a lot of development on our end of finding things to help the student from the standpoint of where they are to where we want to get them.
I'm not great at multitasking. Others are much better at that than me, but I did, Walt, I think I did see a question on really just how districts are approaching employers. So again, Kristen, if you're able to get back on, please jump in on that. But Shelby, Arden, you want to talk a little bit about how you're approaching employers? I know that one of the things that you're doing in the districts is really trying to get a sense of what the needs of the employers are.
Right, it involved a whole different process. And like Shelby kind of explained a little bit earlier, we used to say to an employer, hey, we have this kid who can do this and this and this for you. Where can you put them in your business, in your industry or whatever it is? And tended to get a lot of, oh yeah, they can't possibly fit in here. That just won't work. The way this process works is you go to the employer and do an interview of the employer and come at it from the perspective of looking at their needs. So instead of we have a student who, it's what do you need? What kind of person would you need to work here? Would they need to be able to, and then they tell what the potential employee would need to do. They need to be able to lift something. They need to be able to alphabetize. They need to be able to sort things, and they tell us what types of skills they're looking for in their industry or in their business. And then at that point, we can go back to them and say, we have a student that fits these needs. It's a completely different perspective. So they've already told us what they're looking for, and then we find the student that fits that need. And we're also working on the student's end to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for that employer. But from the employer standpoint, it's a completely different perspective because we're going and looking at their needs first rather than just trying to plug a student into them as an employee.
Great, that's really helpful. Anything to add there, Shelby?
She's muted again.
I'm not sure why that keeps happening. Sorry about that.
People are just trying to shut me up. My goodness, I can't talk. I agree with Arden. Taking a few minutes and just even initially contacting the employer and say, we want to talk about what your employment needs are. We want to talk to you about what you are looking for in a good quality employee. Where are there holes in your process that needs are not getting met? Initial meetings with employers have been going much better just because of that simple approach. We put them first in it, not the students first as we have in the past.
Walt, what do we know from Kristen? How's she doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Great.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm on the phone, and apparently I'm still on the computer, so I don't know which one is actually working. But I'm on here.
We can hear your voice. One of the questions was just around, from participants, was just around, how you're approaching employers. And Montgomery County had talked a little bit about it from their perspective. Is there anything you'd like to add to that in terms of how you're approaching employers as a part of this project?
Sure. So kind of like what Montgomery County has been doing is we were initially starting as we are going out trying to find the right employment opportunity for the students. We were putting the students, not the businesses, first. So after talking with them from Transcend, also working with Trina and with you all, we really took a step back and reevaluated how we needed to approach the employers. So our focus then became on getting to know the business versus what we could provide, and more of what does the business need, and then what skills can our kids bring to the table to help that business. And when we did that, we saw more doors being open and actually more businesses being willing to discuss and have our students come in to do more job shadowing, just to see the kids in action. And then also then they started talking about other businesses that began to help and say, hey, you might want to check out this business as well. They would love to have some of your kids come out and, try employment activities there, just to see what would be a good fit. So we just really changed the way we were looking at stuff.
Thank you both for both districts for responding to that question. Walt, do we have any other questions for this particular kind of segment of our time together?
Can you share what kinds of skills are written in the goals and objectives?
That, I think, depends completely on the student. We are developing a positive personal profile for each student, and that kind of, in working with the student and the family, will generate the type of goals that the student needs.
And that's what we are doing as well.
There, but
Yes.
Yeah, well, thanks for the question and thanks for that response, right? It's exactly what we would expect in terms of the focus being on the individual student and particular needs. But it's been really interesting to certainly watch up close, but then hear the districts talk today about their intentional efforts to engage employers, as we know that that's an area that is often one that that we have to put some intentional focus on. So, I mean, it's not that the districts weren't thinking about employers before, but just that really intentional kind of concrete action to get a sense of what the needs of an employer are has been something that, as you heard from the districts, has been very important to them. So, Trina, anything to add sort of at this point, given obviously the experience and leadership?
Yeah, I've got a lot to add.
Please do.
I'm about to blow up over here. Actually, the approach to the employers, you're still putting the students' needs. It's just a different approach. So you've done your PPP with the students. You've spent your time with your students. So you kind of know when you go to an employer why you're going to that employer. It's not just going to employers at random and find out what their needs and then going back to match it with a student. I wanted to make that clear that the employment specialists do have students in mind. That's why they're approaching a particular employer. It's just that during that interview, the student is not brought up. The focus is on that employer and what that type of employer might need in an employee. So I just wanted to make that clear that they're still meeting the needs of a particular student. And community work has always focused on a particular student. It's never really been about going in the community and to an employer and saying, hey, we got this kid, can you take him? it's always been about a student's needs and what and should have been going to a particular employer because you had a reason to be there for a particular student. So I just kind of wanted to clarify those things. I didn't want people to get off base and just think that these girls are out there, you know, just going to employers and, hey, what's your need? And then going back and saying, oh, we got this student that can go there. They're doing a lot of work in the beginning before they actually go to a particular employer. I just kind of wanted to clarify that. Right, Shelley? I mean, you guys do a whole lot before you even go to talk to that employer. I just wanted to clarify that that's how the process is being done.
Great.
Yeah. Shelley's shaking her head, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Trina, and your perspective is just critically important in this, and certainly you know, the longevity of community work transition program. So thanks for those clarifications. And let's see, Walt, any other questions before we move back to sort of the moderated portion with the districts?
Yes, Johnny, we have one other question. And the question is, how were you able to get the employers on board since they had the old way of thinking?
Kristen, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Well, we really took it as just a whole new approach. We didn't really have any employers that thought of it as, you know, this is the way it used to be. So we really just used this as an opportunity to kind of do a fresh start in our community. We really took it as more of a just a different approach. We really attacked it really totally different than the way that we had done things before. So for us, it was, like Trina was saying, you know, doing a lot of legwork in the beginning with our students and you know, completing those positive personal profiles and working with those students, and then really digging into what are some employment opportunities within our community, and then researching those as well before actually going to make a visit or a call.
Yeah, thanks. Montgomery County, anything to add to that? I think the question is really, you know, how did you get employers on board? I think you've talked a little bit about that. Anything else to add?
No,
Okay.
I think that was about it.
Shelby, were you muted again? Sorry, there you go.
I don't understand. I completely agree with Kristen. It was a fresh start for our community as well. Some of the employers, that maybe one of the employers that we met with, had we approached in the past, just much more specific, trying to match those abilities of the students with the needs of the employer. I think it's just been a different approach.
Yeah. Well, great. So we've heard both districts talk about it in different terms, but you know, one of the things that I'm hearing is it's a different approach. It's a very intentional approach. I've heard fresh start, you know, so, you know, let's not minimize, and I know none of us are intending to, but let's make sure we don't minimize the value and the importance of folks feeling like you want to know what their needs are, right? I mean, that's just a human nature thing. We as humans we tend to start listening and tend to start responding a little better when we believe, you know, folks really do care about what my needs are. They're just not trying to get something from me. They're trying to understand what my needs are. So I think there's been incredible value in just that intentional effort to make sure that employers know that, hey, we're not here just to sort of check off a box or go through the motions. Part of our job is to prepare, you know, kids to work in this community, and we want to know what the needs of the employers in our community are. So can you just tell us about what you need and what's important to you? And I just think there's been incredible value. Walt, any other sort of current questions before we kind of move to the next section?
Johnny, we did have one question come in. It was, can you give a specific example of a goal or skill you have for a student that will help them obtain meaningful employment?
Am I unmuted?
You are.
Yes. I think one that comes to mind initially for one student that we worked with is money identification, being able to recognize the difference in bills and being able to count money and be able to count change. And because we are finding employers that are wanting people that could be on a cash register back up, but as backup, may not be their exclusive role there. So, you know, that's been a goal that we've worked on with one student.
Kristen, anything from your perspective in response to that question?
Well, specifically, we have a student with this program that was recently employed as a gas attendant at our local BP. So for him, a specific goal was teaching him on how to, if someone wants $20 worth of gas, getting him that, you know, being able to recognize when that will cut off, and also, you know, just the operations part of pumping gas, knowing how to take the cap off someone's car and, you know, selecting the kind of gas they want. So it's just very specific to the student.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kristen. Let's start at least a response to one more question before I'm also taking a look at the time. And we're doing good, doing real well. But Trina, this might be something we kind of keep in mind and make sure we circle back to before the end of the call. You know, what does documentation look like compared to media work transition reports that employment specialists fill out monthly? You know, as an employment specialist, Shelby, you may want to just give a quick response to that from your perspective. And Trina, anything you'd like to add? Then we can come back to that a bit later. But after Trina and Shelby have a chance to respond briefly to that, we'll move on to our next section in the